So welcome everyone to the 12th episode of Expert Speak, brought to you by Creators of Product. Today we have with us Ashish Sinha. He's a very common name in the Indian startup ecosystem. He's also the founder of Next Big What and Unplugged, which are two really common names for anybody who's building any kind of products in the country. And he's been doing this for a while. So if I have to put in a very, very concise way, I would say he's one of the established gurus in the ecosystem. I've been talking to him for a very long time, and I was quite eager to bring him to the show and listen to his generally very raw and honest thoughts. He's an experienced product manager. He's been product manager at Yahoo, has worked with IBM and a bunch of large companies, and that too at times when product management was not as hot as it is today. So he has seen the journey of both product management as well as Indian startup ecosystem. So without wasting any more time, I would first of all I would thank him very much for taking out time, and thank you everyone else to join as well. And without taking any time, I'll hand it over to Ashish now to speak about the topic today. Thank you, Ashish.
Cool. Thanks, Devakar. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. So I'll just give a quick background. So basically, I've been into products for quite some time. I started my career as an engineer. I was part of the team which built India's first application server. We were three of us, and then from engineering I moved to product management. So when product management was a very, very nascent field. In fact, there were three of us in Bangalore, and we created a LinkedIn group. And the funny thing is, after 1 year, we realized that there are only 10 product managers, 10 to 20 product managers, people who had product manager in the LinkedIn title. So we kind of dismantled the group. But over the last few years, definitely there is so much of growth, so much of stuff which has happened in product management. And so today, the way I want to structure this is very simple, that every crisis gives us an opportunity to create something, to do something big. And for Indian startups, I think it's basically you either transcend or you die. So it's I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is. Okay. A very interesting slide.
Yeah, there'll be some GIFs, so bear with me. It's time to evolve, and I'll share some of my thoughts, and we would love to have a broader conversation after that. So here we go. So basically, thoda gyan hai, so transcend or die. And so the story so far of Indian startups, if you look at it, so Indian startups have raised more than $100 billion for sure. I don't have the exact numbers, but definitely it's more than $100 billion. But most products that we use, which we use internally, right from your dev stack to your product stack to marketing stack, and the devices, it's either from US or China. Indian companies so far have done a great job in productizing services, but not in creating products. So when I say productizing services, definitely companies like Swiggy to Zomato, Dunzo, everybody. So they have productized service, which is, I would say, the first step towards the product economy. But we have not created great products, and feel free to disagree with me on that. And which is why I think Devakar said that, I'm a little raw in terms of what I talk. So, and I'm open for a conversation and debate on that. So, so aggregators are generally more powerful than creators. And this is a very global trend, right from Airbnb to pretty much everybody. But I think everything is going to change. So these are some of the companies which are more of aggregators, and they have done a great job of productizing service. So for example, I'm personally a big fan of Swiggy and both Ola. These guys have really productized the service to an extent that they have created predictability in the service industry, which is extremely rare and extremely difficult in India. But what should we build next? And I think that's where I want to talk about. Obviously, aggregators they had more unprecedented negotiation power. They are the gatekeepers, which you can always, which we all know that Swiggy decides to see where do you order your next Chinese food from. And it's not you who know, but Swiggy will basically decide which are the right, how to display the right, the most apt search result. So far, the growth has largely been driven by discounting and marketing. And then COVID-19 happened. It was a good love story, I would say. But now with COVID-19, I think everything is going to change. But the bigger picture, so we don't even know the bigger picture of COVID-19. But here is what is happening right now. A lot of restaurant realtors are shutting down. There is nothing much left to aggregate. In fact, talk to any restaurant and they are pretty much on the verge of shutting down. So what would Swiggy and Zomato aggregate now? Consumer spending is zero, pretty much zero right now, and will probably improve marginally in the next few months. So everybody's going through this shutdown moment. There are layoffs happening, negative salary hikes. I don't want to make you guys feel bad. So, it's negative salary hike. It's a good bureaucratic way of saying basically everybody's effed up. Most industries are down. But then one more thing has happened in the Indian startup ecosystem, and which I think is going to fundamentally change everything. Mr. Mark Zuckerberg is in India, and so the implication of this deal is beyond words. I don't think we have even touched or we even know what is going to happen in the next 3 years in India. This is definitely going to impact every company which is building transactional and financial services in India. But most importantly, it's going to impact a lot of aggregators, because with Jio and Facebook, I think a lot of opportunity in India is kind of taken off the table by these two companies. So what's the future now? Is it it's time to build, or it's time to do more copycats? I personally believe that it's time to build. Build what? Vitamins versus painkillers. I believe I've seen a lot of conversation around this, and I really want to talk about this whole aspect of building vitamins versus painkillers. Everybody, all the startup gurus, everybody's saying, yeah, you should build more painkillers. But here is something that we need to understand, that should we build better vaccines, or we should go after building something like a painkiller or a vitamin? That discussion really, since everybody's saying go for painkillers, the truth is the VC ecosystem in India, fundamentally, they have created a grant for COVID-19 painkiller, but eventually all funding is now going to happen in TikTok drones. So, and there is nothing wrong with it, so I'm not even saying that they are wrong about it, but the reality is that what is vitamin versus painkiller is very contextual. We can argue that Netflix was a vitamin, till pre-COVID-19, but now it is actually a painkiller, because it is actually helping people with a little bit of entertainment, which is grossly missing these days. So a lot of these conversations on vitamins, building vitamins versus painkillers, is really not that meaningful anymore, largely because we don't know the context of the problem statement. Now, so here is what I recommend, so post COVID-19, so let's say 3 months, whenever we are done with this, will you still go to a local Kirana store, which is basically a painkiller right now? Or will you shop from, say, an online grocery store, which is going to give you 20% discount? Will you ever go out with friends or order beer and food from Swiggy, Zomato? So right now, we don't, everybody's saying, let's build painkillers. I've seen enough interviews, enough content out there. But my sense is that we need both. We need a mix of both. And depending on what kind of product are you building as a product manager, as a founder, you need to define that, where you are in the journey of the customer. And these discussions will overwhelm you, because building a TikTok clone is not a painkiller. Maybe it's a painkiller right now because creators are stuck, consumers are stuck. So maybe it's a painkiller right now, but it is basically an entertainment dose, and it'll raise more money than a COVID-19 killer for sure. What lies ahead? So basically, what should we build? I think, so this is a great quote by Ray Dalio that I think we should be very excited about the new future. We are now in a wonderful revolution in terms of the capacity to think and use that in a way. I would say that this is absolutely the most treasured thing in the future. That is, it's time to rethink what we are building, and not from building a vitamin versus painkiller context, because that is very short-term oriented. Brave New World, it's time to build. Here is my take. Makers will make a comeback. By then, there'll be a digital transformation globally across industries, gig economy. We need to get ready to learn new skills every day. And essentially, here is what I would really recommend, that, if you're building anything new, my sense is that product focused teams will now win. And if you think of it, you will not be satisfied with anything lesser than a TikTok experience or an Instagram experience, because you are more used to that kind of an experience. So anything which is lesser, it might work in the short run, but the moment that TikTok is back, I don't think any of the clones will survive. Or, so the ones who will survive will be very, they'll face a lot of competition. And the only way they can work this out is by staying focused on the product. It's time for product-driven growth businesses, but what does it really mean? What is product-led growth? So if you look at it so far, this is how it has worked earlier. Growth was a function of marketing budget. Talk to any consumer company. It's essentially growth has been a function of marketing budget and what's your ad spend on a monthly basis. Revenue has been a function of sales calls, which is why a lot of companies, even consumer and SaaS, they have been mostly focused on hiring more, sales and lead generation mechanism. Products, unfortunately, was merely a unit of consumption, which is marketed and sold. It was not the center of the whole discussion. Lead magnet was your discounts and offers. That is, the more you sell, the more is your OpEx. It works in companies which are productizing services, but if you're building anything new, this is not going to work anymore. What changes now? Let's look at some of the realities. Very less funding available. Even VCs are asking companies to be frugal and at the same time get to profitability. There's very less customer money. Obviously, all of our spends have been like curtailed by almost 80%, I would say. Some of the big media companies in India who were making, say, close to 80 to 90 crores revenue, they are down to 10. Extremely competitive marketplace. No option but to bring down the ops component and create more of a product-led growth business, uh, which is where, for example, and when we talk about product-led growth business, so if you think about it, uh, why is it that a lot many of you are, say, buying from Amazon versus say Snapdeal or Flipkart? What is it about some companies that you stick to them and you don't stick to others, even though they're offering you much better discounts and all of that? Because fundamentally, these are great product-led businesses and everything has been thought through from a product angle. What does it really mean to be a product-led business? In a product-led growth business, product is the lead magnet. You stick around because of the product and move upstream because of the community. That is, you come for the product and you stay for the community. Like, how many products in India do you think can kind of fall into this definition? How many companies are trying to create community? Right now, if you're not building a community for a product, you're basically, your OpEx is, you're again going the same pre-COVID-19 world where you are, you need to run ads to, generate leads. You need to hire more salespeople to sell more. So all of that needs to change, and product should become the lead magnet. So this is a great book. I'll share that as well. So product-led growth means that every team in a business influences the product. Product management essentially asks you that, why are we doing this? What does the market want? Marketing is essentially asking, how can our product generate a demand flywheel? Now, this is a very different from what marketing has been asking so far, that, hey, I need more money to run ads. I don't really care about the product. Give me a sense of, what can it do? I'll create my own, marketing campaigns and I'll generate a demand flywheel. But marketing now needs to ask, how can the product generate a demand flywheel? Sales cannot be dependent on MQLs, that is marketing qualified leads, but PQLs, right? Rather product qualified leads. So for example, if you think about it, how many companies, edtech companies in India, especially the K-12 and who are focused on kids and that segment, how many of these are basically marketing companies versus product companies? Where is the product? If they stop running ads, will you buy from them? So sales so far has been a function of marketing qualified leads. So sales look at, okay, what are the leads I've gotten in my CRM from the marketing team? But now it needs to change to PQLs because you don't have money left to run ads. Customer success. How can we create a product that helps customer, because successful beyond our dreams? And this is a great book by Bush Weiss on product-led growth, which I would highly recommend. But essentially, the point that I'm trying to drive is that how can we create a product where everything is centered around the product and not around the marketing budget and the sales calls. This decade will belong to product-led companies, and key characteristics of such companies: growth is a function of product and engagement. Revenue is a function of product and community. Lead magnets are product and communities. Some of the examples: Dropbox, Slack, Tinder. Look at any of these companies and even some of the SaaS companies like Zenkit and all of that. So the growth is a function of product and engagement, and revenue is a function of product and your engagement in the community. And lead magnet is not your ads, but it's the product and the community. So this is this basically summarizes the whole conversation, that everything else, right from marketing, sales, customer support, product management, customer success, professional services, design, engineering, everything revolves around the product. You are free to say that this is bullshit, this won't scale. I'm sure that many of you who are into product, who have been doing product management, and even who are part of the product teams, would have this feeling that this is bullshit, this won't scale. But here's a company that I want to. Here's an example of a company which is basically one company which has truly redefined the meaning of a product-led business. That is Atlassian, $20 billion revenue without sales team. Jay Simons has a wonderful. In fact, you guys should look at some of his podcasts and interviews. But here are some of his statements, which I found truly amazing. The flywheel begins with creating a great product. Back in the early days of Atlassian, we talked about building a remarkable product. We chose the word remarkable with intention. We wanted to build a product that people felt compelled to remark upon. That would then build word of mouth, which would help us acquire more customers. Now, the keyword here is remark. Having an opinion, having a take on a product is really important. I think it fundamentally changes it creates a bigger value than saying that, hey, we've built a great product, but nobody cares about it. But when you build a remarkable product, you are essentially saying that, we have opinions and people are going to have opinions, but whatever it is, let's actually make it good. The most important thing is to build a product that people felt compelled to remark upon. And there are very few products in India where I see are so good or so weird, so opinionated that you feel compelled to remark upon. And that creates a word of mouth. It's good, it's bad, doesn't matter. Mitro was a Code Canyon script. People felt compelled to remark upon it. It just came at the right time. Clone, good TikTok clone, great name, and the BMKJ, the Bharat Mata Ki Jai growth hack, kind of worked for them. But fundamentally speaking, we need to rethink the whole product-led business model and look at companies like Atlassian. But the flywheel begins with a great product that solves meaningful problem for customers. And then we try to remove as much friction in front of the customer's path as possible. So this is really interesting. After this, I can probably share some of my notes from Jay Simons and some of his interviews, which I have curated if somebody's interested. But fundamentally, companies like Atlassian, there are so many companies who are not just SaaS companies, but they're enterprise companies, which are truly, who have great revenue, but at the same time, they have built a very product-focused culture. And a company like Atlassian, which has no sales team, I think it's remarkable. I'm sure that many of you hate Jira, hate the whole look and feel of it, but well, we all feel compelled to remark upon it, but we still use it. TLDR, build product-first mindset and product-led businesses. And yeah, I think that's pretty much. And select a battleground that is the market very, very carefully. I think this is where founders, I think, have to really focus on. If you have a great product and still a bad market, you're anyway screwed up. So selecting a battleground is really, really important in the long run. And if you are into product teams, choose the market very, very carefully. Understand which are the markets where some things are going to work. For example, I just saw a TikTok clone, by the way, uh, which has only religious videos, and it has around close to 100K downloads, I believe. Uh, so there is nothing wrong with any market, but choosing your battleground, that is the market, is really, really important. That is one thing which I have learned from all my experiences, and I'm kind of implementing in the new product that we are launching soon. Happy building. I'm on Twitter at Sina. So that's pretty much with my content.
Uh, Relevant in times like this. Thanks a lot. I'm sure all of us have a bunch of questions, and I'll start with one. So, actually, I'll start with two questions. The first question is that uh, why do you think Indian product builders, companies, startups, they lack that product mindset and get transferred to marketing or growth or sales, etc. Like what is it? Is it like is it structured? Is it just because of some reasons? Why is that? Is my first question. The
Sorry,
second,
your voice is breaking a bit.
sorry, just a second. Is it slightly better now?
Yeah, much better actually.
Yeah, so the question is that what is it that the Indian startup and companies and product builders lack, which is stopping us from making products, product driven companies? This is my first question. And the second question is that uh, having seen a lot of ops driven businesses, as if I can say, the Swiggies, the Olas, Flipkarts do so well over last many years, does that create an ecosystem where more such companies are built?
Cool. Great questions. So first of all, I think we have the best product leaders in India. In fact, if you look at it fundamentally, uh, a lot of product leaders in Silicon Valley are Indians. So it's not that we lack product leadership or product management as a thought process. I think the fundamental question that we don't do in India and uh, is that we try to solve for services very easily. I'll give an example. If you look at Indian population versus say something like Israel. So what happens is in a country like India, we start building products like, okay, so if everybody starts paying me 10 rupees and I sell it to 10 lakh people, I get a very good revenue, right? So, but in a country like Israel, you know that you have very less people out there. So you cannot sell it to 10 lakh people. So what do? You think products that I need to sell it to million people. So I think that fundamentally changes a lot of way of our thinking. We are still not a product first thinkers in India, largely because selling services brings you a lot of revenue, a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with it. Uh, and uh, if you really see the growth of Indian startup ecosystem, there are companies, for example, somebody mentioned Postman. Yes, Postman is one of the rarest of the companies, and I think Abhinav and the team, they've done a phenomenal job. First of all, they don't spend money in advertising. Uh, they have built a fundamentally great product driven by purely by insights. Now, talking about insights, I think we lack a lot of market insights in India. Uh, in fact, I would say that Chinese product managers know India better than Indian founders, which is why a lot of consumer companies in India in content space are where actually before all this happened, but they were built by Chinese product managers because they don't have a judgment on Indian population. They look at numbers, they look at insights, they look at data, but we often end up thinking like a services that if I can make money from say 100 rupees from 10 people, I can scale this to a lakh and this and that. Uh, I think that is good for a service business, but fundamentally product businesses need to think global, think bigger from day zero, and that is a little bit of a challenge in India right now. But we are seeing some really good product companies coming out of India at the same time. So a lot of things are changing. It's just that we need to accelerate it further. Look at it, all your Facebook, Google, everything, basically India runs on WhatsApp. India is a Facebook country, and between Facebook and Google, there is nothing much left in Indian consumer space except for products which are productizing services, companies which are productizing services.
All right,
so
but first you have to unlock your...
See, I said Google and Android. It's weird. Sorry, your second question was on Ola. Yeah, success of services companies. Yes, I think that is a great step, which is why I said in the beginning that these companies productize services, but at the same time, some of these were, if you look at it now, these are more of easy opportunities now. I mean, they're gone opportunities. There is nothing much you can do in, say, cab space. You can launch niche services, but you cannot build the next Ola the way Ola has done. So we have to rethink commuting from a very different perspective, which is where companies like Bounce and because of COVID-19, I'm sure they are evolving their strategy. But if you look at success of these companies like Ola, Swiggy, Zomato, I think that sets a tone for the next set of companies, because next set of companies cannot productize or aggregate anymore because there are no creators left in the market. All the restaurant businesses are shutting down. Majority of them are probably going to say no to Swiggy, Zomato. And I think we're already seeing a lot of stuff happening, with companies like CureFit, CultFit. Nobody's going to go to gym anymore, at least for the next 6 months. So how can you build now a very tech-focused, machine learning-driven company which can actually understand your movement? So that changes the problem statement, that changes the way you are working. So I would say the future is very, very bright. It's just that we need to accelerate it a lot better than what we have done so far.
Makes sense. So let's move on to the questions now. Shruti, you have the first question.
Yeah, I think my first question got answered. I was asking about Postman being the product that could be out of India. Thank you, Ashish, for picking that up. Thank you so much for this great session as well. The other question that I asked was, do you think a super app would be an answer to having a great product like they have in China? But that's probably because their internet penetration and the kind of pro users that their generations have adopted is a little different from the Indian subcontinent. Do you think making something like that, which of course, again, is a service-driven thing, but is still a product business?
Yeah, I think...
answer for India doesn't have a super product?
Sure. Thanks, Shruti. Great question. I think, so the whole super app thing is very debatable. And see, the way I look at it is that there's not going to be one single super app in India. Like we have, so we have so many gods, so many religions. So every religion, every region can have one super app. So we need to really think of super app as a very, interesting sort of services opportunity. And that's when the product thinking will drive in. For example, say companies like WeChat and all, they have actually scaled up because they were the ones to think of this. In India, PhonePe, Paytm, they're already doing this. And I believe Paytm, so my fundamental thought process that a company like Paytm can actually become a super app. And PhonePe has a much better technology team, but that debate is very...
that's a different debate.
Yeah, but will having a super app is kind of going to answer the question that India doesn't have a great product. I think we need at least 20 such experiments, and it need not be a super app. For example, so many small and medium businesses are really looking for products, which is where I really like companies who are solving for the small and medium businesses like Khata Book.
Mm-hmm.
They have productized the service. It's not a great product. I was just talking to one of the founders, one of the heads of a very senior person in Microsoft. He has quit and he's launching a product in a similar space. And his first reaction was that, I came from Silicon Valley, and I came from US, and I've seen great products in Microsoft. I have built great products. And when I see a company like Khata Book being very successful, I'm like, is this really what India needs? Can't we have a better experience products? I agree on better experience, but Khata Book is fundamentally solving a real problem statement.
Correct.
So that is what we need. I won't go after the super app problem statement right now, but I would really say that we need to solve for fundamental problem statements using products, not by building services.
Just a follow-up question. Do you think it is because the kind of maturity that the Silicon Valley has had with the amount of technology and internet penetration and the world view and world presence of all the startups or the established businesses that they've had there has been over a span of maybe 20, 22 years now, of which the last 15 has probably been the one where they've had data enough to understand. For example, for India, the whole startup ecosystem has probably pushed big only after the last recession of 2008, and we still don't have a lot of data on a lot of things. Plus, we're still struggling with internet penetration to the extent that that is the same with maybe first world countries. Do you think that is the reason why they have a maturity in the kind of not only users that they have, but also the product builders that they have, and which is why most of what I would put as accomplished product leader or accomplished product people move on to the Silicon Valley because they want to be on the forefront of technology?
Yes, great question. I think I have very strong opinion on this, but I'll keep it a little cool.
Okay, another time. I don't want to hog all the time.
No. I think, the way I look at it is that we can think of Silicon Valley. They have been through great experiments like HP, Apple, all of that, right? And great hardware, software experiments to now come to this point where they are actually building great products. I think we have also been through that. See, the most successful product company in India, in my opinion, and I'm not looking at any revenue number or anything, I'm purely looking at the impact, is a company called Tally. Now, it is not built by some cool 20, 30-year-old founder. They've been around for many years, and they were the ones to think product first. And it was extremely rare. So we can always say that, hey, we can't, Silicon Valley had this whole great thing going for itself, and we don't have. I think we have had enough of experiments and experience over the last few years. So like you said, 2008 was a great year for India because a lot of great companies started around the same time. And right from Flipkart to everybody. And I remember that there were a lot of naysayers who told, who were of the belief that Flipkart will never take off because nobody's going to buy anything on internet in India. I think the next best time is now, largely because everything is going digital. Even my father-in-law, he's actually asking banks to sell to share all the details over WhatsApp. He's like, I will not go to the branch anymore. So you have to provide me all the services. He has some retirement stuff and all that. So I think everybody is going digital. So this crisis gives a great opportunity to kind of, build products. If not for this, I don't think we were so, it won't have forced, say, CureFit to rethink its products.
Right.
They would have done more gyms, more centers, more OpEx, but now, suddenly everything is down to zero. So that gives a great opportunity. I mean, just to conclude this point, India is considered to be the land of yoga, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meditation and yoga. Everything started from here and all that stuff. But the number one meditation app is actually not from India. Because when we think of meditation and yoga, we think of, chalo yaar, let's start a center.
Mm-hmm.
So if I know yoga, I'll start a center. If I know meditation, I'll teach to, like I said, India's population. I'll
Yeah,
just
that's
do
what I
calculation.
meant. The penetration isn't enough for me to think of a business online. I'll rather do it in my community first and make money
Yes.
and then go ahead.
Exactly. But now it's changing because you have pretty much full penetration. I mean, pretty much all the TG is online or is trying to get online.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of actually, changes the entire conversation because of COVID-19, everybody has gone digital. And I know of, in fact, just before this session, I was talking to director of product management of a company, and he's telling me that everybody, including all of his team members, are going back to their native town. They want to go back to native because, if everybody is going to work from home, so they would rather be in the native, save money and have a good time, which means that we need different kind of products. So why we need, say, a share chat or a TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
we also need to solve for those, native problem statements, and it has to be solved through a product. So I think that's going to be very key in the next.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't want Facebook to solve for pretty much everything. Facebook and Google have done enough for India. It's time for a lot of Indian companies to solve for.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much for taking up more questions than I was allotted. Sorry, Diwakar, for
Thanks,
that.
Shruti.
You have your question?
Did you say my name? Hi, Ashish. This is Utkarsh.
Hey,
You
hi.
should be able to see me now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is bad. I'll probably close it. Okay, so you mentioned about edtech companies, and you mentioned that they could either be product-led or marketing-led, if I got it right.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, how would you put Byju's? Now, to my understanding, Byju's is majorly, very focused on sales and marketing, the sales that they get from their teams. And they do have a decent product, but do you think they would be capable to achieve a massive user base without the work that their sales team has done and penetrated tier 2 and tier 3 cities and the parents over there?
Great question. And which is why, I like interacting with a lot of product folks because it helps to get these questions. So I'll tell you, Byju's is a great content company. I mean, the first question that I often ask a lot of founders is, what business are you in? And the way I look at Byju's, it's a great content company. They have really done a great job of, making a boring content look sexy and appealing.
Yeah.
Purely from an operational point of view, yes, they are essentially a sales company, marketing and sales company, which is why they have to sell their products at such a high price. But the way I look at it is the next Byju's cannot be this. The next Byju's will be a product company which can enable anyone to learn at, say, 1/10 of that cost. And that will not be sales driven. Because fundamentally, if, a lot of these things work. So like I said, a lot of these were services which were being sold. So Byju's and other companies have productized it. But you cannot have the same playbook for the next company. And the next company can have a much bigger TAM because there are a lot more parents who are looking for, online classes, but they find Byju's to be extremely costly. So, but how do you bring down the cost? So for example, Byju's need to sell because they have hired, and I think their starting salary, I interviewed quite a few Byju's guys because we're hiring for sales, and their starting salary for fresher was, I think, 9 lakhs.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, dude, this is crazy. But yeah, I mean, leaving all their sales tactics that they have used, Byju's went for an opportunity, and I think they have done a really good job of cracking on that opportunity. The opportunity was very simple that Indian parents have this whole FOMO. Sharma ji ka beta is still doing better than your own son or daughter. So, so that thing is what Byju's has built on. And I believe a lot of companies like White Hat and others have followed the same playbook. It's working. It's working from a VC point of view. But if you can really disrupt it through a product thinking. So let's say there is a product which is a much better product than Byju's, but there's no sales team. There's a sales team, but a very small sales team. But since everything is focused around building a great product which people consume, because from what I have seen, Byju's doesn't have great retention. The engagement and learning is very less, but it's a great place to be in because the consumers and buyers, the consumers and users are different. The buyer and users are very different. Yep. And the buyer doesn't trust the user.
Yes.
So
yes.
Parents are like, you failed in your, you did well in 10th because in class 7, I did really put you for Byju's, but you failed in 10th. I don't, it was your mistake because you were not studying, right? So I think it's a great place to be, but fundamentally, the next disruption in this space will happen when somebody launches a great product and kind of just sells on the virtue of product, not on virtue of your sales team. So
I understand.
So right now they're winning, but I'm sure that, I've seen enough of negative posts around Byju's and their sales tactics. I'm not going to debate here or anywhere. I think each company is to itself, but it's just a matter of time when somebody, for example, let's say some of the global companies launch in India and they just, build a great product, which is content and product and great experience. And then parents are like, instead of paying 30,000, 50,000, I'll pay only 1,000 because it's product driven. So I think a lot of those disruptions will happen in India. It's just that founders need to stop thinking of building another Byju's.
I understand.
Thanks for this answer. So if I'm reading this correctly, you're saying that the edtech game is still quite open, right?
Totally. I think it's one industry. See, for example, I'll give a very, very basic example. My kids, some of their friends have taken White Hat, because of Sundar Pichai. Parents are like, "Arey, chalo Sundar Pichai" and all. But the ones who have actually built a gaming app, this guy is learning from Udemy, or this guy is learning from a teacher nearby. So I think there's a lot of hyper local disruption which is happening. Somebody needs to just figure out the right product, which is not just about sales. So I think edtech industry globally is very much open. It's one industry which is like super open, and there's a lot of money. But if you want to build another Byju's, it's not going to happen. You have to think of product first.
Makes sense. Joe, you want to ask a question? Joe? So Joe's question is that a product-led growth possible and advisable during early stages of a business, especially when going through the marketing route, can help a company to preempt the market. So,
I'm launching a new product in the next 15 days. It's going to be in a closed MVP. We just finished one MVP and we're doing one more before we launch the full-fledged product. When I talk to my team, the first question is that, let's run Google ads, let's run Facebook ads. My fundamental belief is that the moment you outsource your thinking to Google and Facebook, your customer acquisition, you are entering a treadmill, because initially you might feel good but you are losing your moat. How about you build, let's say, community first, or build your own audience first, and then you start the growth and the marketing function. Because going through, see, marketing and advertising are two different things. Marketing is important. Advertising, yes, if you have raised a lot of money, there's nothing wrong with it or nothing right about it. And if you have raised money, you don't need to listen to me or anybody else. But if you are really focused on building a product which is growth centric, you have to start from day -1, and which is what fundamentally we are doing. And honestly, I mean, the feedback of the product so far has been very, very good. But we are not going to spend any ad money in the next, at least for the next 6 months. We have, in fact, when I'm talking to any marketing or a growth person for hiring, my first question is, the first question they ask is, what's your marketing budget? And I tell them that, basically your salary is my marketing budget. If you can't really scale, if you can't execute, then, my budget is gone, you're dead. So I think it's possible. There are enough companies who have been doing this. It's just that we don't celebrate those companies. Those companies don't get a lot of press and visibility. For example, I think Shaleen Jain, they just crossed $4 million ARR. It's a Chennai-based company, totally bootstrapped. Obviously, there are companies like VWO and others. But if you look at it, all these companies who are doing good in terms of product-led growth, they never went after a maniacally advertising route. So that DNA was never there. The DNA has to be about, how do I get to the right audience using the current budget, using current resources? So
this also reminds me of a line that I heard or read somewhere, that it's better to have 100 users that love you than to have 1,000 users that like you, because
exactly.
Because it's far more difficult to move users from like to love than to scale the number of users that you have that love your product.
Exactly. And I think, see, you have to really be in touch with the audience. And I know so many founders and product teams who are not in touch with the audience, and it shows up later. I think, thankfully, funding in India is happening, if you play the right cards. But you can still not have the user love, no matter how well funded you are. And we have seen enough examples now that, people ditch platforms. So for example, when TikTok comes back, do you think creators will stick to TikTok, or we will go back to TikTok, or stick to their clones? My guess is that people are going to go back to TikTok, because it's, companies who have built TikTok clone in 1 week, they don't know TikTok. They're basically saying that TikTok is just a video tool, right? So that approach of companies where they have built a fundamentally good product, and then you raise money, you do marketing, you do advertising, all of that is fine. But from day zero, I think it's a bad idea to spend a lot of money on marketing. I think that's a topic for a detailed another 1 hour. Yes, exactly. Discussion sometimes. But yeah, okay. So next, Vignesh, do you want to ask your question? I think it's a very interesting non-tech question.
Sure, Diwakar. Thanks, Ashish, for this session. So a bit interested on not products not in the internet space, but more into the manufacturing side. The success of ID Fresh Food is not really talked about in Indian startup space, right? But I recently went through an interview where the founder mentioned how they leverage data where they have leveraged data to build a distribution system for themselves. So what's your take on these manufacturing sector? Because most of whenever we follow on Twitter, it's mostly tech is what is talked about, but these companies are not really talked about.
Yeah, the real world companies are not being talked about. Actually, I had a very, very interesting observation this morning itself. So we have BB Instant in our apartment. And so Big Basket has launched its own idli batter. they have launched their own brand called Fresho, right? So now, till last week, we had both ID and Fresho in the fridge, in the Baby Instant machine. And Fresho was priced at 62 rupees. ID Fresh, ID batter was 75 rupees. So, I mean, I generally want to observe things. So whenever I would go down or past the machine, I would look at how many, or I would generally open the app and look at what are people buying. Very interestingly, the number of ID packets kept decreasing by Big Basket itself, and they started putting more of Fresho. From this week onwards, they're only putting, actually from today, I mean, when I say this week, from Sunday, what I'm seeing is they're not putting any ID packets, they're only putting Fresho. And now it is priced at 75 rupees. So the biggest challenge for ID is to create a bigger brand, which is known for something more meaningful, because if you look at it, the gatekeepers are going to learn from you because they have access to a lot of data points. Now, ID is a very smart company. So like you said, they use data to understand what to build next. So for example, their coffee product is probably the most innovative product I have seen in the last few years. And it's unfortunate that we don't talk about some of these interesting products. But if these companies don't collect user data and they leave everything to, say, Big Basket is definitely going to copy from them. The way Amazon has done with its sellers, and I mean, this is pretty well-known case study for Amazon that they have been copying. They have built, all the homegrown brands for depending on the data. So this is probably going to be the most interesting lesson in the FMCG space. That how do you own the brand in people's. How do you own that perspective in people's mind that I want to actually buy an ID batter and not a Fresho batter, even though both of them exactly look the same. So the packaging, I don't know how many of you have seen the Fresho ID package. Maybe they are testing in some of the areas in Bangalore, but it looks pretty much the same. So you can't even differentiate from a distance. But now, since Big Basket owns my purchase experience, they decide to sell their own product. So if you are building a D2C brand, I think the most important element there is branding. People don't, I mean, so far, a lot of Indian companies have not spent on branding, but especially the ones who are coming from tech. But now I think if you want to build a B2C brand, you have to spend a lot of effort in building a great brand, because typically you would be selling through a channel, and the channel is basically, it owns your customer data and all the transactions. So they'll end up competing with you. And it's just a matter of time when ID will start facing this pressure from Big Basket. So, it's a great space, but I think branding is something which is the most important element in D2C, and which is where companies like Veera and others have done phenomenally well. I think they are one of the few companies who are thinking of building a very interesting brand and this whole element of it, and the whole experience of colors and everything, which was, I mean, I found it to be very, very interesting, because I don't think we see a lot of these very strong opinionated brands in India, especially in FMCG space. Everybody kind of plays it very, very safe.
Got it. Thanks, Ashish.
So one last question from Prajwal.
So yeah.
Thanks for the amazing session. My question is, what are your thoughts on the video conferencing tools, since they have become more of a utility now? And recently there was a Bhopal-based company who started an app, How's That, which is also into video conferencing. And recently we also saw JioMeet launching. So what are your thoughts on it? And my second question is, there was recently also a huge uproar with regards to the UI of Zoom and GeoMeet being exactly copied and similar. So could you share your thoughts on this?
Sure. Sure. I think it's a very, very interesting. I mean, actually, I was planning to do a couple of videos, on product management, and this was one of the topics which I wanted to talk about. So the well-educated and well-informed elites of Twitter and Facebook and everywhere, they have basically gone after GeoMeet for copying the Zoom user experience. And my fundamental belief is that Geo knows its business better than us. So Geo knows that. See, here is my prediction: in a month from now, every government office will use GeoMeet. I would be surprised if, say, Mr. Modi starts his broadcast on GeoMeet. It's a great, it's a tool which has exactly the same user experience as the tool that you are used to. And it is made in India. It has all the, chest thumping features, which actually a lot of people would like to use. So Geo knows its users and their emotions very, very well as compared to what we think we know about Geo or other products. So, but here's the thing: Geo has a moat, which is distribution, branding, government. I would say Jugaad / connects. Just after GeoMeet being launched, the CAIT, I think Confederation of Indian Traders, they banned Zoom. I'm sure these are not coincidences, and only few things happen when you are Geo. So since they know their business very well, they are focused on that. For them, product is a way to get things out. And but if you're a startup, you cannot do that. You don't have any moat. So the whole definition of moat changes. Let's say if you're trying to disrupt Zoom, maybe you can build a better interface, a better product, or build a community layer on top of it, build something more meaningful. But copycatting is something which has become normal after a lot of people saying, hey, TikTok clones, after say Naval and Balaji tweeted that, if you're building any of these Chinese apps, talk to us. Now that has set a lot of wrong intent in the Indian startup ecosystem that, let's build more Chinese copycats. I think when it comes to apps and software, China has been a very original economy. There are definitely copycats in manufacturing, but when it comes to apps, they have been very original. And but this whole copycatting will probably not take us anymore. I mean, the next TikTok will not be a TikTok for sure. And the last thing you want to see is that a company in Silicon Valley again, launching a great product which takes Indian consumers by surprise. Everybody goes for it. And then you are like, why did we not think of it? Because we were building another clone. So, I mean, Geo can do it. So let's not even worry about what Geo can do. Geo can do so many things. Geo has distribution, while a startup or even a Series B, C company funded company doesn't have that kind of a moat. So the best mode is to be original and solve a real problem. I think that's a great product to build. That's a great mode to have.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ashish. I somehow connect with you on the very direct points that you said. So one of the main things that I'm taking back from this session, and which is something which I want to share with everybody as well, is that if you really have to build a sustainable product, and if you really have to solve for the user, you have to be very direct. You can't go around. You can't think about things which are not important. You have to be very focused. You have to be very clear. You have to understand your users and say the right thing. If you don't say the right thing, if you don't think about the right thing, if you're not focusing on
on that one main goal that will solve problems for your users and give them a great experience, it's unlikely that strong companies are going to be built. So thank you so much, Ashish, for your, I would say, sort of eye-opening session for everyone. And we wish you best for your product. We are very eagerly waiting to see all that you have done. And we surely believe that it will get all the success.
Yep. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks everybody
round
for
of applause. Can we unmute? That's the max we can do here.
That's good. that's a great way of building a real world experience, man. Cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks. It was great talking to you. So see you sometime.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.